6 important takeaways from my recent solo trip to Newport, Rhode Island. This was my 5th annual solo trip. This is a tradition I started right out of college. It is now a promise that I keep to myself to continue to do these solo trips at least once a year. There are a couple rules that I do have for myself when it comes to my solo trips. One of my rules is rotating between international and domestic travel every other year. Next year's will be international. Number 1, slowing down creates space for creative thinking. I did read a book titled Portals of Manifestation. Perfect, easy read to start and finish on my trip. Such a good read, and there were so many great takeaways from it. Prior to going on this solo trip, I was introduced to Warren Buffett's Think Week. Going into this solo trip, I did have that in mind. I kind of had a mini Think Week, and by week I mean just a couple days, but it still allowed me to think creatively, get out of my normal day-to-day life, and get my wheels turning again. Number 2, alone time is essential for growth. I think it's easier said than done, and it does come easier to me given that I am independent, I'm also an introvert and a homebody. I spend a lot of time alone, and I pretty much always have. I really do enjoy my own company, if I'm being transparent. And I think that's also why it's easy for me to go on these solo trips and not have a difficult time being alone. I do think that alone time in a uncomfortable setting is even more impactful than just being in the comfort of your own home, spending time alone. I think both are great, both lead to growth. I think if you want to go deeper and faster, getting yourself out of your normal comfort zone and getting in that uncomfortable setting will lead to like 10x growth. Conversations with strangers are underrated, okay? Especially in today's landscape of us being on our phones all the time. Granted, I am definitely guilty of this myself, also very consciously aware of it as well, but going out and about and seeing people down at their screens, especially even being on my solo trip, and just that is like my time when I love to people watch. Watching people live their lives, interact with one another, that is something I always notice. People are sitting down at dinner, sitting down together, but they're not there with each other. Their heads are down in their screens, fully consumed by something else that's not like right in front of them. But I had a lot of lovely conversations with strangers on this past solo trip. I often find myself sitting at a bar. When I go to a restaurant, I usually don't make reservations for my solo trips. I often tend to just sit at the bar. I'm a party of one, so much easier, and a lot easier to get in at restaurants that are like a little bit more exclusive, that typically you would need a reservation for. Sitting at the bar also allows me to talk to the bartender, allows me to talk to the people next to me. And in cases like this where I'm traveling to kind of like a tourist destination, yes, there are a lot of tourists around as well, and you can learn a lot of insightful things from people that are coming from all different walks of life, from different parts of the country that you've never visited before. There are so many takeaways that can come from just opening up your mind to talking to strangers rather than being consumed by, it's so easy in those situations to just go on your phone. That is how I get to learn so much about things that I never knew about before, including the place that I'm actually visiting. I love talking to a local. A local stopped me on the street while I was filming content and was like asking me if I was doing it for Instagram or whatever, not being weird or anything like that. But then I was like, hey, you're a local. Let me pick your brain about some of your local recommendations or things I'm just finding online. So we got to talking, and he was basically planning my entire trip for me, which was amazing. Those types of conversations that I have on my solo trips are honestly the ones that I think about and remember till this day, because they are so impactful, even if it's just about something so mundane. That is purely one of the truest forms of getting out of your comfort zone, is talking to strangers, getting to know them, getting to know their backstory, even though you likely will never see them again. I was even telling a couple I met that this is totally out of my norm. Talking to people, sitting at a bar, like I don't always do this. This is typically just something I normally do on my solo trips. I'll do it from time to time at a coffee shop or things like that, but I work from home. I'm by myself again most of the time, so I do get pretty stuck in my ways. So for me to go on a solo trip and really put myself outside of my day-to-day life, outside of my bubble, and put myself in an uncomfortable situation of you're either going to sit here in silence or you're going to strike up a conversation with somebody, and it could be one of the best conversations you've ever had and you can learn something really amazing. You never know what could come from those conversations. I don't have a problem talking to people or going up to strangers, but for me, that is super important that I am immersing myself in those conversations while I'm on these solo trips especially. Number 4, grounding activities are important and need to be prioritized every single day. For me, that looks like meditation, journaling, reading, walking outside in nature, and those are a lot of the activities that I did on my solo trip. They are the things that are important and they honestly have to be non-negotiables. It's just something I need to get better at prioritizing every single day. Number 5, stepping outside my comfort zone brings me back to myself. When you step outside of your comfort zone, you often feel like you're being tested. And it's in those moments where you have the opportunity to look inward and ask yourself, why do I feel like this? And what is it about this moment, this environment that is making me feel challenged? In that moment, you have the opportunity to learn more about yourself and kind of come back to yourself. Being outside of my comfort zone has always brought me closer to my truest self. When I do take it a step further and do the work and the reflection to look inward and understand why I'm feeling uncomfortable right now and what that says about me and who I am. And it's a full circle moment, okay? Taking home the lessons that I learned. Every trip looks a little different. I usually never know the purpose, like the true purpose of my trip until afterwards, or at least nearing the end. As every trip has its own purpose. I don't go into it with any expectation or any purpose in mind, but some trips are more fun than others. Some trips are more challenging than others. Some trips are for relaxing and looking inward, like this past trip was. It all just varies, but the lessons that I learn along the way are so important for me to make sure that I'm implementing afterwards. Things aren't going to change overnight. I'm not going to just be this new person when I come back from my solo trip. Literally, it's just a few days that I'm typically gone. What do you expect? But making sure that I am taking the time to reflect on my trip and what I've learned along the way that I'm able to take home with me and start implementing into my day-to-day life. Some things will come easier, some things will come with a challenge, and that's just the beauty of it all, right? That's the beauty of life in general. I don't mean to sound all philosophical or anything like that, because I'm not, but those are just a couple of the things that I took away from this past trip. I will leave you with this. If you have never taken a solo trip once in your life, I do feel as though it is a requirement for everybody in life, no matter what. I would absolutely recommend you take a trip. It doesn't need to be extravagant, but it can be. It can be a lot of fun, and it can and probably will be challenging. But again, that is where the lessons happen. That is where the growth happens. And that is one of my favorite parts about doing solo travel and why I think it's important for me to continue this tradition, because it always brings me closer to myself.